Yeah, as Johannes and Samuel will have to actually do the heavy lifting here and present the development of the Intavia Visual Analytics Studio, meaning the component helping to analyze, to understand, to make sense of complex cultural data. I will try to do just a short pitch and open up with one sort of larger framework we could imagine Intavia to be a part of. I'm not sure if you're aware of the concept of the 4D mirror world, but it has been suggested by Frederick Kaplan and colleagues to be like a mental model we can use that sort of results from a cumulative development of large-scale photographic reviews happening since nearly centuries, 3D models of buildings, cities, and territories that have been generated out of these measurements, the integration into physical and virtual globes. And last step, we are currently working on the addition of the temporal dimension as a way of navigating not only through space, but also through time. So the shorthand is Google Earth with a time slider. But we are convinced we should use another mental model here that is the so-called space-time cube. And I can shortly show you how, for example, this 4D mirror concept would help to integrate different collections as we do with Intavia. Because, for example, when you just have the whole geographic surface of the Earth and you have like just an open vertical dimension that is now modeling time, you can map, for example, the spatiotemporal origin of cultural objects in space and time. And it helps you then to understand different collections at just like a tiny selection of those 3D scatterplot that is space-time from this projection. So also it would be nice, obviously, to add some context as we do or strive for with Intavia. For example, the biographies of different artists, writers, musicians who produced those artifacts. I don't show you how this looks like here on screen because I want you to also visit, for example, this example later on. It's a 3D sculpture of one biography that we just did with a related project recently. It's done with Mindfactor from Vienna. I will just put it at the table at the back, near to the poster. We also want to draw your attention to, and you can visit it there. So, for the current barriers, Intavia is motivated by the issue, the challenge, that digitization hasn't produced like a coherent data space between our tangible and intangible cultural information components, but we have this kind of bifurcation where we have the tangible objects and all their digital representations on the left, and in other silos sort of stored away information about context, whether that is biographical information, news articles, art historical reports, or other types of narrations. So we try to overcome this and reconnect those two hemispheres to actually do what art historians do since ages. Maybe the most venerable method of art history is to look at both work and life, but sort of our recent digitization history has kind of blocked this synoptic view of us, so we hope to draw together some notable collections with Intavia. And then, again, after digitization has separated those two digitization efforts, the digitization of work collections and of event collections, we try to put them together again as an integrated representation, right? Because then you can start to reason how, for example, different, I'm not sure if this doesn't currently work, how different events in a life influence the creation of different artworks and how artworks, again, opened up different pathways taken by the individuals. Right. The emphasis will be on the so-called Visual Analytics Studio now in the following, where we have a sort of focus on analyzing and interpreting cultural information, but as you will see, we tried to cover and support the whole workflow model of working with cultural information. So not only the analysis part, but also the searching part, the compiling and curating part, and later on we will see how we can also use visualizations to tell stories effectively. So this is the whole platform you already know of. I will hand over to Samuel now, who will shortly talk about supporting queries with visualizations, and then we have in the following the next session that is about storytelling, and that will be done by our colleagues. Samuel, this is your presenter.
Thanks, Florian. Yes, as he just said, Johannes and I will give you now a very short overview of the current development state of the Visual Analytics Studio. And if we want to visualize or analyze anything, we need to first find it, of course. And Eva gave you a short overview of all the different user personas that we want to support with Windhager. And to enable all of them to complete complex queries, we are developing a visual query interface that makes it possible to search without knowing a formal query language like Sparkle, for example. So in this query language, queries are defined as search graphs visually. So here you see a node, for example, that represents a person with 3 filters applied to it. And these filters can be created interactively in centered widgets that already give a preview of the expected result set that you will receive, or at least for the number of entities that you will receive. And to actually create complex queries, you can add multiple nodes to build a search graph and also filter by related entities. At the moment, this is still under development. What you can see here is the actual already deployed user interface of our front end, where you can simply enter a text query to search through the labels that we have in the knowledge graph. Here we entered Klimt, and you can see a list of the result set. And you can see here that's not only persons, but all the different entity types that we have in the knowledge graph. So we have persons, objects related to Klimt, places and institutions. And we also have an advanced search where you can enter more search filters. For example, in this case, we were looking for persons that were born in Graz. And we will look at one of these people in more detail now. That would be Marianne Stokes, who was a local painter here. When we go to her detail page, we will see all related media resources to her. We see meta information like linked IDs or her occupations. And we also see some visualizations that give an overview over her relations and her spatio-temporal information that is stored in the knowledge graph. Then when we scroll further down, we also see a list of all the relations and events that she took place in, and also her textual biography. And if you want to look at more than just a single entity, you can enter into the Visual Analytics Studio part, which will be presented by Johannes now.
Thank you, Samuel. I will continue with giving you a brief overview of our prototype. The Visual Analytics Studio. I will run you through a few examples. Let's say we search again, advanced search, and we search for any person that is related to a certain place. For example, Tuusula, that's a place in Finland. That's a use case we currently work on together with the Finnish colleagues. And we get the result set on the left-hand side. And to work with this, we create a collection. Collections are basically kind of buckets where we can organize data we want to work with and look into it in more detail. And then we switch over to the Visual Analytics Studio, where we have on the left-hand side, we have the data panel, where we have all the 58 people we found. And we can open it up and see also not just the persons, but all their events as well. So let's have a look at a single biography as well as in the detail view. As before, we create the map. And we add the first person, Hallonen Becker. And we see all the events, the birth events, death event, one birth event, career events, and production events. So we have the information from the biography and from works. And then we make another work space where we have like a different view with a different panel layout, and we add the map we made before, add a timeline, and add a network graph. And again, we add the same person to all of them. And here we end up with the same view we just saw in the detail page. And on the map we saw there are many, we can connect the dots chronologically, we can zoom into the timeline. And when we hover over the different data points in all of the panels, they're linked visually with each other. And we can also go over a creation event, a creation CH object, for example. and see and load the image from Wikidata. So this was a single biography view, but what about prosopographic views, where we see many more biographies? So we add another person, we see on the map there are additional events colored by event kind, and to avoid overplotting, we can also go into the settings and cluster the events in a donut cluster. On the graph, we see that they're now linked via Tussula, the place. As Eva mentioned, a lot of our entities are linked via places. We had a third person. We see how the network graph updates. We have 3 timelines for each person. And now we add all of them, 58 persons. So the timeline now changes its layout. Have a different view. We can zoom out and see the global extent of these 58 people moving around the globe. And what we also can do in here, we can resize the panels to have more space for a certain view. And now the network view is a little bit small, so we swap them, the timeline and the network view interactively. And while the network view is loading, we can also change how the biographies or the timelines of each people are sorted in the timeline. So we have like a chronological order now. And when we zoom out of the network graph, we see this interconnection, and it's mainly like from places. And yeah, you can add more for this kind of progressive graphic view to see many more entities. Besides clustering by this kind of donut chart we had before, we can do dot clusters on the map and on the timeline. Besides coloring, here we again color by entity, by event kind. So the green, and also we differentiate shape. So all production events are square rectangles, so they link back to the cultural heritage objects, and the circle, they link back to the biographies. Besides coloring this way, we can also do temporal coloring, which is a first approach to show space-time, where we use this color ramp where bright red is the birth of a person and the nearest black is the death of a person. And we can see, compare timeline and map over time for 2 entities here. And we can also color by entity identity, where we use different color hues to differentiate between entities. So this was the main part of what the prototype can do regarding visualization. We can also edit data, and we can edit entities and events. So for example, for Gustav Klimt on the detail page, we go into an edit view where we can change entity attributes or event attributes and event information. For example, if we know the first event took place in Vienna, we can add a related entity. We select Vienna, and it's related. Let's see how we can edit events. We have an example from the Tussula dataset, and we see there was one event 100 years before, a creation event 100 years before the architect in this case was born. So what happened here? If you investigate on Wikipedia, we see that Sebastian Grippenberg was not involved in the initial creation of the church, but was involved in the renovations in 1889. So we go into our edit dialog and edit the information, the label, the dates, and return to our timeline, and we see that the event now is placed properly in this position. Additionally, this was editing. We have creation as well. So what if you have a kind of this sparse data set where we only have birth and death? What can we do to add more information? We can do manual data curation or import local data. For manual, for using our interface, we have UI to add events and entities, which is still work in progress. We can add media resources like images, or edit or add biographical texts for close reading, as you saw on the detail page. Additionally, the second option is to import Excel templates or what Angel was referred to many times today, a Wikipedia NLP pipeline where we get information, import it as a collection, and use it throughout the entire application, the VA Studio and the Story Creator. Now, Florian, for the closing remarks.
Thanks so much, Johannes. To not infringe on the time of the next splendid talk, I will just shortly gloss over challenges, open project challenges. In this case, we had to do quite something to avoid drama at the receiving end of the project development pipeline. I think it's quite common in visualization projects. Don't do this if you don't have to. Don't do waterfall models. Query complexity is still ongoing. As Samuel mentioned, we are working on supporting also complex queries. We try to tackle the balance between achieving a balance between a robust system and something that we can also publish on with novel aspects. There is tons of data uncertainty. There is tons of data bias, as we have heard today, and we try to open this up or balance it out with the before mentioned pipelines. And then there is data sparsity, as we have shown, and we try to allow humanists to add their own knowledge to those formal models by just opening up manual curation functions. We are definitely not where Charles Perrin was with his famous graph that has been already mentioned today. You find the poster back there at the right-hand side if you want to see what a really fantastically dense sort of biography visualization could look like. Future challenges, maybe for the larger field of CH and DH, how to model time humanistically. We had quite some ambitions on this track. I'm very happy to hand over to Johanna Drucker and Marian Dirk afterwards and assign this to the next talk. We have been thinking about modeling maps and territories historically. We would be happy to do this also with our next project, because that just would go way beyond our resources. Visualization literacy has been mentioned. We will try to offer onboarding. We are trying to ensure interface aesthetics. For example, Huda Lamkadam, who will be part of the final panel, reports that art historians often refuse to use digital tools because they are just too ugly as opposed to the primary resources they are working with. And yeah, the comet is upon us. We are fascinated and terrified by what artificial intelligence is opening up. It will change quite something also in our field of work until everything, including data creation, analysis, and visualization. Thanks so much. And with this, over to you, Johanna and Marian.
Thank you, Florian, Johannes and Samuel.